afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm out for Keystone testing, so that's where I'm at right now. That's why I'm sending you this recording. So I'm going to give you a real short overview of Lesson 6.12, which is Challenges in Modern Africa. It shouldn't last for more than 4 or 5 minutes. I just want to give you the basic summary of it, the basic highlights of it, and then it's up to you to of course, read your pages 836 to 841, and then complete the 6.12 checkpoint as well. Alright, so the main question here is, do you feel the Europeans and their colonization are responsible for the turmoil in Africa? So, in other words, the European powers that colonized Africa, were they partly responsible for the problems in Africa today? That's the main question here. And just a reminder again, I'll be out today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week for Keystone testing. Make sure you're keeping up. Read your announcements that I came out to you. You should be working on your final PowerPoint project, which I'll give you time in class to work on tomorrow. And then for Unit 7, it's optional. So if you decide to take those checkpoints, great. If not, you're not going to be penalized for that. But so again, Unit 7 is optional. There's only a few lessons in there. That's where your project is located, but don't forget about that too. If you want to do them, you can. If not, those checkpoints are not going to penalize you. Alright, so some of the challenges in Africa throughout its history and even today. You have civil war, genocide, disease, apartheid, and poverty. So we're going to touch on a few of these here and kind of explain why Africa has gone through these issues. Well, starting in South Africa, South African history is kind of is punctuated by a term called apartheid, and apartheid means apartness, and it was basically a way of life in South Africa where blacks and whites were completely separated. They were completely segregated. Couldn't go to the same schools. Blacks and whites were separated in terms of the public bathrooms they could use and libraries. Everything in life was separate, depending if you were black or white. And the one person who fought this was in South Africa was a man named Nelson Mandela, and he actually was put in prison for 26 years because of that fight. And again, it was the reason why apartheid happened was because the small minority of whites that were in Africa had the most power, and they feared the majority of the population, the blacks. They wanted to kind of make sure they didn't rise up against them. So that's why that apartheid lasted for so long. In 1990, there's going to be a new constitution. Nelson Mandela is freed, and apartheid is going to end. But again, 1990, it's not that long ago when you think about it. So it lasted for a very long time in South Africa. But again, Nelson Mandela and his imprisonment and the attention he gained to that cause is a big reason why it ended. And he's really their national hero in South Africa. And even today, it's a multicultural society in South Africa, but still, you still have a lot of blacks living in poverty because of that. How long that lasted, apartheid, keeping them from getting good jobs and going to good schools. They're still feeling the ramifications from that. All right, so let's look at Africa as a whole here. And if you look at this map over here, all these different colors are different ethnicities in Africa, and black marks are, of course, the boundaries of the modern countries in Africa. And this is really the major problem in Africa today. When the European powers came in and colonized Africa and took it over, they created these countries. They carved out these countries, like Kenya and Ghana and other ones in here. And when they carved these countries out, they didn't really pay attention to the tribes that were already living in these lands, and a lot of times they separated these tribes, or in some cases they grouped tribes together that didn't get along and still don't get along. And that's why you have so many issues in Africa today. Is these tribes are grouped into countries, and they really don't have a whole lot in common. They don't speak the same language, they don't have the same customs, and yet they're living in the same country. And a lot of the turmoil in Africa today is because of that. So when you hear about these issues in the news, that's mainly why. And look at all the different ethnicities that are in there. There's a ton of different languages, different customs in Africa. And again, this was a problem in Nigeria. It was a problem in Uganda, and you had a lot of turmoil and conflict in those areas of with these different ethnicities fighting. In Nigeria, you had an issue between the Muslims and the Christians there, and you also had an issue in Rwanda between two different ethnicities, two different tribes really, the Hutu tribe and the Tutsi tribe, and the result was you had a civil war there, and the Tutsi tribe was favored by the government, even though the Belgian government, even though they were the minority, and the Hutu didn't like that, and they basically fought a civil war for many years, and the Hutu tried to completely exterminate the Tutsi tribe from Rwanda, and again, it was brutal atrocities committed on both sides, and really, I mean, it was a genocide. They were trying to exterminate each other from Rwanda, especially the Hutu trying to exterminate the Tutsi. And you also had a problem in the Sudan. Well, that's right over here. And namely, it was in the Darfur section of the Sudan, and you had a conflict between the Muslims and the Christians. You had the Muslims in the north, the Christians in the south, and they were not getting along. The Muslims dominated the government. A lot of the Christians didn't like that, and other tribes didn't like that. And again, you had a civil war along religious lines in the Sudan, in the Darfur area of the Sudan. So again, the countries in Africa that experienced problems are the ones where you had ethnicities or religions getting involved in conflicts with each other, like we saw in Rwanda with the Hutu and Tutsi, and in the Sudan with the Muslims and the Christians. Okay, Africa today contains half the UN's least developed countries. Parts of Africa, people live on less than $1.25 a day. And the question is, why are they so poor? Well, a lot of that goes back to dictators taking control after they got their independence from the European powers. After they decolonized, a lot of these dictators took control and really exploited the country, took a lot of the money for themselves, and didn't leave a whole lot for the people there. And the other big reason is what we talked about already. These ethnic, religious differences, these wars devastated the countries, and you see the result of that in Africa today. Poverty, big problem there. There's a lack of clean water, sanitation, medical care. 90% of the world's deaths from malaria still occur in Africa. And HIV or AIDS, two-thirds of those affected worldwide live in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's a major problem, disease and poverty in Africa today. Alright, so don't forget to do your 6.12 checkpoint. Here are the two questions. Make sure you enter them in. The first one deals with apartheid, which we talked about in the lesson here. And the second question deals with Rwanda and the issues there. So make sure you enter that into your the correct answer into your 6.12 checkpoint. Make sure you do your reading too, 8:36 to 8:41. And I will see you tomorrow. Well, actually, I'm not going to see you tomorrow, but I'll send another KML out with another short recording tomorrow where you're going to have time to work on your project. All right, good luck. Make sure you do that checkpoint.